Hey there, welcome to the DCW breakout session. I'm Eric Crivella, have Marvin Johnson with me here. We're gonna, our presentation's connecting the field to the office, right? So in this presentation, we're gonna give a bit of a background in terms of addressing the major challenges that are faced today in terms of AWP and connecting up with smart inspections and digital workflows to progress and do inspections and do completions, connecting the dots between the office and the field, and looking at it from a kind of a digital twin perspective. And we're also going to take our time in terms of giving you an overview of DCW and kind of framing AWP from our perspective and how we connect the dots as a digital integrator. So it's all about integration, automation, and orchestration. So I'll give a quick background on myself, and then Marvin, you'll give a background, and then we'll jump into it. For those that don't know me, I'm Eric Crivella, Director of Business Development at Digital Construction Works. So I've been at it for many years, almost a couple decades now. I started a company with a good friend of mine, and he did some cool stuff at NASA. We developed that, developed a tool called ConstructSim, and licensed, grew that business up, sold it off to Bentley Systems in 2008. And stuck around at Bentley, and have in 2019 rolled out with Digital Construction Works, and with the mission of doing digital integration, connecting the dots between the planning, the progressing, and the plan versus the actual versus the as is. You know, besides that, my role within DCW as the Director of Business Development, I also get heavily involved with CII and have been for years, right? I'm the chair of the Advanced Work Packaging Community of Business Advancement, which is now turned into a really wonderful organization over the past 5-6 years. We've been at it in terms of in the CBA. Within CII and the CBA, there's several subcommittees and joint working groups. There's about 130, 140 people that are actively involved in participating in it. I would encourage others to actually get involved with the AWP, CBA, and CII in general. So besides my role within DCW, I have this role within CII, helping to bring the community together and producing the deployment tools in order to make these value scenarios a reality related to AWP. Marvin, you want to give an introduction?
Thanks, Eric. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can hear you, Marvin. Yep, Marvin, we can hear you if we dropped off. All right. Well, we might have lost Marvin, and I hate to give away his thunder. There you go.
Can you hear me now, Eric? Sorry.
Sure can.
Right. Apologies. So yes, Marvin Johnson, Digital Twin Specialist. I work in the Innovation Lab, running the lab for integrations and kind of looking at new concepts. My background before I came to DCW was with companies like Bechtel and other companies. I spent a 9-year career there recently from the virtual product delivery perspective, BIM perspective, and more recently when I was there looking after innovation for AR and VR and field mobility solutions. That's kind of led me to look at how field mobility could feed in and BIM and models can lead into a digital twin strategy. So part of what I do for Digital Construction Works is look at how we can connect up third-party data sources into a digital twin context and really address the promises and the opportunities to kind of drive improve productivity, even if it is slightly incremental, but also kind of help manage data from the office to the field but more importantly, back from the field to the office. So kind of get that continuous cycle going on. So really looking forward to chatting today about some of the things we're doing in the lab and kind of opening up some thoughts and ideas around how AWP could go beyond with some of the smart technologies that are available today. So I'll hand back to Eric.
Excellent. Thanks, Marvin. Okay, so let's give you a little bit of background in terms of DCW. If you're not familiar with Digital Construction Works, as I mentioned in 2019, 2 years ago, around this time, we spun off from Bentley Systems and Topcon Positioning Group. It's a 50-50 joint venture between Bentley and Topcon Positioning Group. If you're not familiar with Topcon, they make laser scanners, machine control, geo-positioning devices, robotic total stations, drones, etc. So positioning, geo-positioning devices, and of course Bentley Systems, a leading infrastructure software provider. And so the parent company's a joint venture here, but really DCW was formed to be a digital integrator to provide services and solutions and to link things together, right? So to create and help fill these gaps in terms of, neither one of the parent companies, can do all the integration with the third parties like we can. So it's a digital integrator and really trying to take the high ground, fit for purpose, best of breed, tech agnostic. How do we put the right solutions in place in order to deliver outcomes? So Marvin's part of the Solutions Integration Lab and the digital twin portion of that. We have a number of subject matter experts in terms of bringing things together and trying them out in the lab and then putting them in place with our clients. So, one of the things that we have in the background is also a construction integrations platform, right? That's able to connect the dots between various project IT systems and partners, our third-party partners, bringing those together. Really on the not only on the IT side of it and the actual bringing applications together, but looking at it also from the people, the process side of it, and the technology solution, right? So it's really more towards that outcomes model, and to the point above that in terms of we're big believers in taking the 4D, 5D, the XD, right? So, the sustainability at the 6D, et cetera, but really taking that the plan versus the actual versus the as is, and combining 4D, 5D with advanced work packaging and tying that off with the construction verification, right? The field-based site survey, continuous site survey, et cetera. And really trying to do that to a point where if you do that the right way, you can at least create a basic construction digital twin. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But again, it's not just here's some software that you're integrating together, but more of the overall people and the process and the technology, bringing those together to create a digital culture, if you will. And to get to more of an outcomes-based model and more integrated project delivery. So, along those lines, a quote from some friends at an owner company from a couple years ago still rings true today, right? So rarely do you hear, we're going to find 20 million in savings this year or our replacements will, right? That's the passion, that's the dedication that you want to hear coming from a team that's willing to charge forward with this, right? And the end result on that project was that they made another quote of the project followed the path of construction to the very end, and it was a thing of beauty, right? So they set themselves up on the journey, but they've created the right culture, and they've done the level of integration to get there, right? So DCW is proud to have a hand in helping this owner get to that point of having adopted both AWP and lean techniques into their project execution plan. So it takes a village to do it, right? So welcome to our neighborhood sort of thing. So AWP, you guys are familiar hopefully with the workflows. If you're not, I'll quickly review this and and have a brief kind of frame to what Marvin's going to talk about, right? So obviously AWP workflows, starting with the path of construction. A lot of folks, path of construction is just not one and done. Obviously it's done early on, but then you reiterate on it throughout the process. And then, also taking your time and setting up the construction EWPs and the CWPs and the boundaries for the EWPs and the alignment of the procurement to the CWPs, and creating that early upfront alignment in terms of with engineering in order to get there. In this conference, we've heard a lot of great presentations in relation to how do we get engineering on board here. Certainly that is a big rock that we're looking to move forward with, and it takes getting involved early on in order to do that. So we also, from a workflow perspective, really looking at it from, okay, you have your CWPs, you extract your IWPs, you move it into constraints, you approve it, you have an approval process, you're setting up a platform along these lines in order to manage that throughout the whole process. And the more digital you can make those workflows, all the better, right? And so being able to take that out to the field and make sure you're releasing constraint-free work packages out to the field, and then collecting the progress on that, doing the QA/QC, and looking at it from an inspections perspective and closing out the work packages. Are they done? So this is really the high-level workflows associated with AWP. But the issue is that you have all these silos amongst these folks, right? So engineering is not talking to construction, the inspections. None of this interface management is handled as well as you would want in a shared platform, in an integrated solution, right? So that's what we help folks do, is get to that level of integration amongst these different stakeholders and systems, and putting in place the workflows that deliver capabilities along these lines to enable value scenarios. So we're all about trying to break down these silos and doing this throughout the life cycle of the project, not just the work phase planning portion of it, right? So at a high level, it's at a data and systems integration, delivers a level of predictability. Everybody is doing some form of this right now in terms of linking together your schedule, your estimates, your models, your 2D and 3D documentation and your models, right? Combining that with the schedules to get the 4D, 5D, and looking at it from tying it in with the project controls databases, the field labor analysis, the earned value type of systems, tying it in with the completion systems, then the materials management and the procurement and the track and trace related capabilities, and developing fit for purpose work packages and constraints, right? So how do you tie all that together and get to a point where you have the plan versus the actual versus the as is in a virtual construction model with the analytics and the dashboarding in order to show greater situational awareness in terms of where you're at any given time. So how do you create these connected data environments, right? And put these in place based off of your project and your company's, your portfolio of projects. And it's really about creating a bit of a digital ecosystem along these lines. So the integration platform, both as a service and as a concept of linking together the digital threads, the 4D, 5D, the path of construction, right? Linking together the work packaging effort, the constraints, linking this in with the procurement as well as what materials have arrived on site, where things are at in the location, in your shutdown and the laydown yards, and then taking advantage of the field progressing, connecting the dots with the field, as well as the inspections, the commissioning, and the startup. How do you connect all that together and do that not only at the technology level, but how do you orient people in terms of on the training them and not only the fundamentals, but also the role-based training for where they're at on the project, and putting in place the right processes to drive that, getting that into the contracts, doing the assessments along those lines, and really validating that and helping to co-create this within your digital ecosystem. So it's really, combining the people, the process, and the technology to really deliver predictable outcomes, as well as a construction digital twin. And linking together all these different project IT systems is not a trivial effort, but it's something that everybody has bitten off on. But the more that we can make this non-document, non-PDF, and truly more digital, all the better, right? So chipping away at that in terms of adopting industry standards and trying to put those into play in order to drive more digital workflows in order to realize the benefits along these lines, right? So if this is done properly, you can have greater situational awareness in terms of where you're at on the project. So we're all about trying to provide the integration, the automation, and the orchestration in order to get there, right? And so framing it the right way in terms of, it's not poof, magically, here's AWP, you save 10%. There's a lot of effort that goes into that in order to go through that at a detail level in terms of what you're connecting together from the application side of it, how you're automating those workflows, and then how you're doing the orchestration of that. Again, at a business and technology level, but also on the people and the process side of it. And so working with partners to bring that all together to deliver outcomes, right? That's really what we're about. So what the success looks like, I like to use this particular one because I think we're all having to go towards this integrated project delivery, and we're all striving to get to there. But a 4D virtual construction model, 5D, have it constantly up to date, where you have this near real-time awareness of exactly where you're at on the project, and you're able to use that virtual construction model as a way to plan out where you're going the next 4 to 8 weeks, but the next day, the next shift, right? And having this constantly up to date and being more proactive as opposed to reactive in terms of having being able to make better decisions in terms of having the feedback of the plan versus the actual versus the as is, as well as the understanding of where things are at a detailed quantity tracking level, and the material side of it, and where things are at from a commissioning and equipment perspective. It's all about the data, right? So you've heard that consistently throughout this conference. It is really all about the data. And in this case, keeping it up to date with an active 4D model and providing fit for purpose tools, right? So not monster tools to do this, but how do you put this in place for small cap and medium-sized projects in order to frame this for the majority of projects are not the giga projects anymore, but how do you put in place the fit for purpose type of solutions here? So if it is a large project, to scale it along those lines, but to actually deliver for the smaller projects as well. We're all about trying to provide a feedback loop from the field back into the office, right? How do we capture what's going on out in the field and then tweak that back in and provide that into the virtual construction model to facilitate and enable better planning, decision-making, interventions, and observations, right? So it's that feedback mechanism that creates a construction digital twin that's up to date with the plan versus the actual, and capturing the as-is conditions. A lot of projects now are flying drones and capturing that sort of as-is conditions, processing that information. How do you keep that up to date and keep that going and put that solution in place? Our friends at Bentley have a rich suite of modules within Synchro that are really excellent in terms of on the 4D, 5D, and they've made some great progress in terms of advanced work packaging and incorporating fit for purpose work packaging and constraint analysis into their tool set. And so that's come a long way. I encourage you to check that out as well. But the idea is to have this feedback loop by having the sensors and the continuous site survey in order to plug that back in and do this more real-time interventions. If you do this right on the construction side of it, you really can get to a digital twin, a construction digital twin that can then be used as a way to feed a performance digital twin, right? And to help populate the CMMS system and to really take forward the right sort of asset management related information and carry that forward into operations and maintenance, which is really comes into play in terms of what Marvin specializes in terms of on the digital twin side of it. But if you do this right, you can get to a baseline construction digital twin that can then feed a performance digital twin. But this is a slide that shows the trinity of digital twins coming from our friends at Siemens and their frame on this in terms of how this is really becoming the future solutions and service business in terms of connecting these digital twins together. So interesting frame from them, and one that rings true. So this is kind of a high level frame in terms of what DCW gets involved with at a very high level related to AWP and digital twins and data management and this planned versus actual versus as is. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to Marvin in terms of framing some stuff in terms of what he's doing in the lab here, what we're doing in the lab.
Hey, Eric, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, so we've got a slide up, thank you. I'll just start off by saying, so thanks for having me speak today. But just also mention that, we're kind of, what we're going to show you is how we feel we can go beyond the AWP out into the field. What happens beyond that? How can we improve processes? And what I'll show you will be very much enabled by Bentley's iTwin platform and the ability to consume data models or model data and also federate external data into that view and bring that into our DCW platform where and I'll talk about this later, where we can orchestrate and automate the information and kind of make it actionable. So yes, we as DCW, we are part of the iTwin partner program from Bentley. We are accredited throughout the company as developers. So we've had real good insights into how we could take this technology and advance it from some of the ideas and concepts we've heard from clients, discussed them in the past, recent past, and kind of some of the things we're doing now. So kind of try to boil it down into what we can do with AWP today. Next slide, please. Eric. Next slide, please, Eric. Thank you. Right. So you'll be familiar with this, of course, field constraint management. Typically, we start off with the IWP creation. I'm not here to tell you how that happens. I'm sure we've seen all the presentations previously. But if you look at a typical workflow, if you go to the next click, please. You've created work packages. You're going through and sending that information through to a document control interface. Next click, please. And you issue those packages to the field, and it's containing all the relevant information that you typically expect. But when you get to the IP in the field, it's kind of, I suppose, widely known but accepted that that's where the issues in terms of how much have we actually completed, where are we starting to hit roadblocks, and this will be a much more granular level, which is what could actually affect the schedule. So while we've certainly got the processes nailed down to in terms of how to make sure the package of information is issued to the field, what happens when it's in the field and you start hitting obstacles, unforeseen obstacles, which has a massive impact on the schedule. So next click, please. And more importantly, how do you, for the process closing out those IWPs, how do you keep track of what's stalling, what's missing information, or obviously this should never happen, but 4 and 5 in the field, this is where AWP could potentially be improved upon from talking to various clients. So what I'm going to show you is kind of an example of how we've, in the lab at least, what we're doing to say, okay, well, holistically, this is what we could achieve if we start looking at those applications, those processes, and start putting it into a construction digital twin. Next slide, please, Eric. Okay, so here's an example overview of what the next few slides will get towards in terms of AWP, but essentially we're using core components being iTwin technology, bring it into our DCW platform, but you'd also notice at top right there, a lot of the tests we've been doing is with the RealWear headset, which is a device that's attached to hard hats. If you're not familiar with it, It's essentially a ruggedized mobile tablet, used quite extensively now. I think most companies in the oil and gas space would have been exposed to this, or any other industrial space. And why? Because it allows hands-free ability to interact with predominantly mobile checklists, taking photographs, taking videos, and of course there's lots of applications which are used in these devices, but certainly in the oil and gas industry we're finding more and more use cases, as well as the kind of base use case, which is remote expert technology, which is essentially sharing my video that I'm receiving in the headset, sending it back to a command post or a central dashboard. So that, plus the iTwin technology, we've got a way that actually allows us to integrate with any of these third-party software application vendors that put their software onto the RealWear device, whether it's for a safety use case or an installation work case, which we'll come to. But we, using the iTwin technology stack, we're able to pull that information in from those third-party data sources and federate it against a master model, and through the platform, again, orchestrating the data that's coming through the integrations, we're able to identify particular statuses against particular components. So this is something we've done previously for a company, which basically showed some examples of bringing through material status data. Right, okay, next slide, please. Okay, so here's another one which I'll come back to the previous slide later on, but here is another example of how we were able to federate data from materials management perspective through an integration with Atlas Jovix. We've got the tag data from the integrations there, and we're able to now pull that into our platform and then federate that information against the actual equipment model. You'll see here that we've got scan data plus the fabrication model, the construction model. But if you notice the tooltips that we've got highlighted in the middle there, the grey area of the green writing, through that integration, we're able to then highlight the headline information, status information, and a kind of, whether the material is available, whether it's arrived on site, laydown area. So reading external databases, and as a tooltip, which is just shown as an image here, of course, but with a living, breathing 3D model that you can interact with, you can imagine that you can now move around any item and bring up that latest status information. So kind of what we're doing is looking at how we can bring AWP methodologies into this space. That's the next slide, please. Yeah, so we've got status. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, be a bit glitch mind. So where did we start? We originally started looking at the CI checklists that are available already, and we've got a bit of experience in understanding how forms are currently put together, and also how they can be ported over to devices like the RealWear device. So while many checklists are quite standardized, quite straightforward, from an AWP perspective, it's a bit more complex for our industry. And what we're doing is we're working with partners to be able to take the standard checklist, the headline information and checks that you would carry out on site, and help reconfigure them into a device on a RealWear device. So we use a company called Intuit, one of many, I might add, because we are agnostic, but using an Intuit platform, we're able to say, right, your blank canvas needs to be formatted in this way, such that someone, like the crew on site, would be able to use these devices, whether it's a RealWear device or a mobile device, and run those checks. So we can kind of help normalize the information that's maybe in a PDF or an Excel sheet, and we look to take that information, put it into these mobile applications on the headwear device, but optimize in such a way that we can feed back the information back into the digital twin. So this is just to kind of highlight that, while some of the examples are very straightforward, there are other areas where this can proceed. So I'm pretty much expecting this to advance in the next year or so with some of the more savvy clients that are out there today. Next slide, please. Okay, so so here's an example of one of those applications, what they look like on the RealWear headset. So this is from Interwear, and we took one of those checklists, and this is where we're talking about kind of the reformatting, understanding that it's not just simply a case of pulling that mobile check and stuffing it into a mobile device. You know, you need to really get the benefit out of it. You need to kind of think about reorganizing, reformatting the data. So kind of the 6 main areas here to consider, whether you use your own system, you're looking at these devices in particular from the digital twin perspective. We've kind of broke it down to understanding that while these applications will have the ability to schedule workflows through an integration with tools like Synchro, the checks and scorecard progress in this instance, they could also be driven from the same spreadsheets and programs that are in P6, Microsoft projects, or ideally Synchro. So the issue there is that when in solutions like Synchro or any other project tool, you generally don't go down to a level 4 or 5 resource task level. But this is where these devices and these applications do capture that granular information, that feedback as to step by step, task by task. You know, what are we doing on site? Have we fitted up every single component? Now, while that, if you have that ability to bring it, so we have that ability to bring in the schedule, we can reformat the way the application is picking up the reference points. So here we've got a tag ID, so that we would say, okay, that could be a barcode identification, could be a manual input. But the point here being that we've actually tagged that, the tag information has actually come from the model, from the asset, of course. It may have come from the Jovix materials management application or any other application. Again, from an integration perspective, you can imagine if that information is being pushed through to this application to kind of really connect the dots out. Scorecard type, as is, you'll be able to select a particular status, which is shown on the next slide. So is it a stage, is it a position, is it connect? And these are the kind of things that these applications and headsets are geared already towards, capturing little snacks of information provided on the little, looks like a voice boom on the end of the hard hat. Is essentially just a camera. So this is what the user would see. It'd be the equivalent of seeing a 7-inch Android tablet in front of their, or to the side of their eyesight. Very usable, of course, but having that capability to use the voice activation to navigate through the steps, you've also got the ability to take photographs, so the evidence capture. So if you're running welds or running your torque equipment on the piping and you need to capture the values or for greater records of for downstream maintenance, this is where a hands-free device like the RealWear device enables you to, and an integration with the application in a kind of very structured way. You capture the photographs and the video, but now, because of the back-end integration, it's actually intrinsically linked to a platform like DCW, which is able to bring that information forward. The next workflow is essentially just allows you to continuously run through. So, you know, these tools have really got to be configured for the worker in the field, not such as a laborious process. It's got to be a continuous process. It's got to allow them to kind of deviate if they have to kind of capture a non-conformance in another area or whatever situation arises. So we kind of look at how not just the application fits the use case, but how it fits with the real world activities on site. And just finally on this slide, you'll notice there's a kind of little call button in the top center for each card, as we call them. And this is where, and you'll see in the next slide, the digital twin really kind of starts to make sense from a construction perspective. If you're hitting issues around a particular piece of equipment that's going to affect the schedule in particular, this is where these tools, these devices come in handy, because you can now connect with the coordinators, site supervisors, or anyone who's responsible for a particular issue that's affecting your work, and have that two-way conversation. This particular device can use Teams in particular, which means it's very adaptable. So, but now we're again taking AWP into the field, but now bringing these other devices in to say, as part of your workflow, this actually could be a natural extension of running those AWP checks in the field and getting that issue resolution, not just capturing it, but having issue resolution in the field to then avoid any issues downstream. So next slide, please, Eric. Thank you. So I will go back to the slide in a minute, but this last one here is really about the compounding return on investment. So those of you familiar with the RealWear smart glasses headsets and all these various applications that are starting to come onto construction sites, we already have AWP planning. We're already making strides. We're already getting those increases and achieving the kind of percentage rates you're seeing there. That's kind of known. We've done a lot of that with DCW. We've hit some great milestones in the past with this. You've got the kind of smart inspections in the middle, okay, and this is courtesy of Interwear, so the section, the green section there. Companies in this space, in the oil and gas space, are reporting results that are improving the amount of inspections that are taking place, because the information is structured in such a way that it's reducing error, improving quality improvement, but it's actually improving the productivity. And while it is very straightforward, it's amazing that you can kind of see these kind of the amount of inspections that can rise. Now, when you think about the various checklists that's within IWP world, you can imagine more building up, and the reporting on that could take time. Now, from an integration, we're saying, well, apply that to IWP checklists. And the continuous tracking, as we have with 4D systems, there are benefits there already. That's you're capturing progress. What we're suggesting here is going beyond AWP into the field. Innovations don't always have to be new tools. Innovations can actually be the existing tools put together. That's often, as you'll know, where the greatest benefits have been achieved, by connecting dots there, or in our case, the digital threads with the physical threads of the devices. But if I could, Eric, if you could just go back to one of the previous slides where we showed the overall picture with the 3D model and the icons. Keep going back, please. And apologies, because it should have been at the end of my slide deck. So here, so one more, please. Here, thank you. So all those inspections that have taken place, so you'll notice that, well, it might be so clear, again, we've got the tooltips, we've got the RealWear headsets, color-coded in terms of a status. And through an integration, not a repetition of what's already there, through an integration, we can hook into applications like Interwear, like many other partners we're working with in this space, and bring in that higher level information that's pertinent to the activity. If you think about role-based activities or different industries, in fact, we can bring through that high level information as to whether, in this case, is the inspection active for this piece of equipment or this area. How many issues throughout that checklist have been picked up? Has there been any fail points in there? What is the inspection type? Who is responsible for it? This is information through integration we're actually to be able to bring through, federate into our iTwin platform, and visualize on the model. Now, that's what's shown here, but through the DCW platform, leverage that with additional KPIs that say, okay, well, we have the KPIs in your siloed applications, but now consider it with third-party applications feeding the activities that are happening, a resource level 4 or 5 status that have been captured very simply with these devices, but now on an iTwin platform that really kind of lights up what's actually happening on site. And this again, major, I do want to emphasise, we're not trying to take away from those applications that are in play. It's just an idea that whether it's a headset, whether it's a mobile phone, whether it's a tablet, whether it's any other application provider, it could be any third party. What happens from an AWP perspective? What happens when you bring all that data together, whether it's safety information, etc. And that's the power of iTwins and federating the information. So that is the end of my slide. So hopefully I've still left time for questions. I'll hand it back to Eric. Thank you.
Excellent. Hey, thank you, Marvin. That's awesome. Let me go towards the end here. All right, so just a couple of generic kind of takeaways here. Obviously, technology only gets adopted when it's easy to use and when it can save time and money. When I look at the RealWear stuff that Marvin's been doing, it's just, to me, that just spells like that's a step change in terms of something that's easy interface with, and making it easy for people to input their information, their inspections, their constraints, their progress, etc. To me, that's definitely the tip of the spear in terms of a new user experience, in terms of the usability of this, right? So I think the other key parts here are, how do you have this connected data environment, right, where you integrate, automate, and orchestrate these the field to office, and the office to the field, etc., and doing the data access and accessing that through having that, being able to see that sort of information and access the reports, etc. So it's, you have those digital workflows out in the field supporting the inspection, the field-based constraints, the progressing, the completions, right? And doing that around a virtual construction model that's kept up to date, evergreen, right? So I harp about it, but the whole plan versus the actual versus the as is. And, at the end of the day, it takes a bit of a digital integrator and multiple platforms, but it takes a platform to connect the people, process, and technology, and to get to this integrated project delivery and digital ecosystem. So bringing all that together is not a trivial exercise, and you're linking together all your different applications and your supply chain, and setting this up for success is, it's not a trivial exercise. So we're here to help in terms of as a integrator, and helping you automate and orchestrate things going forward. So thanks for the high level presentation here. And Marvin, thank you for giving us the insights in terms of what you're doing there in the lab. If you guys have questions, we'd be glad to take them. If you want to type them into the question panel here, on the within there, and we'll stick around and answer any questions that you might have. Marvin, the one question I have, that you can just tee up, is that the degree of commercialization of this that you've seen in other projects and other, how far along is the adoption of this RealWear voice activated? Where does this stand in terms of technology readiness, as you would put it?
Right. So I think, so number one, I'm not a RealWear salesman here, so they will have their own opinion. But from my background, it's been on projects. I've worked with devices, not just RealWear, but other similar devices since they started, and tested them out on construction sites. And I think, the years before, it was quite difficult to kind of get the acceptance, but I think without a doubt, the basic functionality of sharing two-way videos for issue resolution, that was a major uplift last year in terms of clients understanding on their own terms how they could use it. So where many people have trod before, many innovation groups within the companies probably listening in today, have tried and tested these devices. I think the last year especially has been a realization that, lots of use cases, lots of applications that could be used, lots of forms, because it is mostly about checklists. But I think now with definitely digital twins, remote expert technologies, and federating data together, companies are understanding, and actually, look, we're collecting some really valuable information at source during construction, which from a digital twin perspective, that's the beginning of the data thread. That's the beginning of the information that's going to give you that historical performance data that you're going to measure yourself against during operating construction. So I think both on the client side, they've become more savvy this year. The projects themselves are seen as more value, and we all know there's hundreds of applications, use cases, checklists that could be applied. It could be applied to. I think now the digital twin is giving people a perspective. Well, actually, yes, there's inspections on the RealWear devices and etc. other devices. You could do that for technology's sake, but actually, if you look at a process sake, bring it into a digital twin thread. Go, right, okay, well, actually, I can strip away everything I don't need. At the very least, if I'm going to use these tools, this is the information that absolutely helps me downstream with my decision making. So I think this, in my opinion, projects in particular have seen the value more so than they have done over the last 5-6 years.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, if anybody has any questions, we're more than happy to take them. If anybody wants to have a chat, reach out to us, get in touch. We have this in terms of our contact information. So if you want to get in touch with either Marvin or myself, reach out. And if you scan the QR code here that gets you to the DCW website. Appreciate your attention today, and we're around for the conference. Marvin's over in the UK, so he's probably going to pack it up, but I'm around for the rest of the day. If anybody wants to reach out, either through the networking, private chats, or get in touch. And appreciate your time today, and with that, I guess we'll close it out. Huh? I'll give you back 16 minutes or 14 minutes, excuse me. All right. Well, hey. Marvin, any closing thoughts? Is that it?
No, other than just say, hopefully this might have spurred some thoughts, whether it's AWP or elsewhere. Yeah, please reach out.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Marvin and Eric, for an excellent presentation. And attendees can go back into the virtual event portal. So the webinar will end now. Thanks so much.